I'm Gary Bembridge. This is another of my cruising tips for travelers. I want to share with you the really common and big mistakes that people make when booking a cruise, starting with this one. Missing the best prices that are out there. And in order to do this, the most important thing of all is timing. Timing is absolutely key to getting the best price. First of all, when are prices likely to be lowest? When cruise lines launch new itineraries, they generally price them at pretty good prices, often the lowest you're going to find. And that's because they want to get people to sign up to booking a cruise way in advance, because they'll often launch itineraries 1, 2, or sometimes even 3 years ahead of time. And what they want to do is try and get people to book so they know how full it is, get the money and get the deposits in. So if you are planning and are thinking far ahead, booking a cruise when itineraries come on sale, you'll often get the best price, or certainly you'll often get a whole bunch of extras added on, so onboard credits or free drinks or gratuities or whatever. So when itineraries launch is when you're going to find some of the sharpest prices. The second key time when you look for great prices is 90 to 60 days before a cruise. The reason for that is you have to pay your final deposit, certainly as the way rules are at the moment, 60 to 90 days depending on the cruise line before the cruise goes. At that point in time, the cruise line then knows how full the ship is, and they then want to clear the rest of the cabins. So they will start to offer really sharp prices, promotions, and discounts to fill the ship. The third really important time when it comes to timing is what's known as wave season. Now, this differs a little bit based on country, but most countries will have the wave season just after the Christmas period and into the new year, the beginning of the year. That's when lots and lots of people start to plan their vacations the year ahead. And this is when most cruise lines will launch big promotions, and they have pretty aggressive sales targets to hit in the wave season to lock down sales. So you'll normally find really sharp prices as well. Really, really important though, is there will be ad hoc promotions coming along the way, whether it's wave or it's the 60-day late bookings. So sign up for email newsletters. That's something I strongly recommend. Any cruise line that you're interested in, because that's normally where they will push out great deals. So all through the year, there may be deals that happen out of these 3 other key periods that I was talking about. The other critical thing when it comes to prices and timing is don't assume that you'll get the best price always from the cruise line or from your agent. Shop around, look at online sites, look at the cruise line site, talk to your agent, and take a look at what deals and offers are going around. Now, largely speaking, you'll find prices are often the same across the different channels, but what gets added is often the key difference. So you might find certain cruise agents will add in extra onboard credit or amenities. So make sure that you're shopping around and looking and comparing prices before you decide to book. Critically important though, when it comes to timing, is once you've booked, particularly if you've booked way in advance, is make sure that you track what's happening with fares. So check in every now and again, or get your agent to check in with prices. And if you find that your cabin has reduced in price, contact the cruise line and ask them what they will offer, because they will normally give you an upgrade or that adds some more amenities in. If your actual cabin price is now being sold cheaper, the cruise lines won't proactively come and offer you a better price. So really important, make sure that you keep tracking. So timing is everything, but also staying diligent and keeping an eye on prices is also important. The second really big mistake and common mistake that people make when booking a cruise is not really looking at the nuance and the detail of the itinerary. This is really important for a couple of reasons. One of the big mistakes that people make is they look at an itinerary, say, for example, in the Mediterranean, and they see it includes Paris, Rome, and Florence. However, the ports for all those places are a very long way away. So you'll often find the itinerary, it might say Paris with little brackets from Le Havre. It might say Rome, little brackets, from Civitavecchia, or Florence, little brackets, from Livorno. So you really understand what port are you actually going to? How close is it to the place that you really absolutely want to see? Another mistake that a lot of people make is they look at the itinerary and they say they're going to all these places, 5 or 6 beautiful islands in the Caribbean or wherever. But make sure you take a look at the detail of the itinerary and understand what time you arrive and what time you leave. You might find that some of those ports that you really want to spend time in, you're only spending a morning or an afternoon in. So a lot of people discover once they get right close up to the cruise that actually the places they want to spend time in is actually not going to happen. Another critical thing when you look at the itinerary is make sure you understand what the sea days are. So one of the things that cruise lines sometimes do is they only list the port days. So you take a glance at the itinerary and you think, oh, that's great, I'm going to all these ports. But you might find there's a lot of sea days interspersed between those. And if you're the sort of person that really doesn't like sea days, you might find actually the cruise is not really the one you want, and you've booked on a cruise that has more sea days than you're really comfortable with. Another really important thing when you look at the itinerary is look at which are tender ports and where you're actually docking. Tender ports are those where you actually use the boat tenders, so the ship docks outside the port and you get ferried backwards and forwards, which does reduce quite significantly, in many cases, the amount of time you actually get to spend on land. The third big mistake that people make when booking a cruise is not really think in detail about the significance of the time of year and weather. Now, of course, a lot of cruises are very seasonal, so you can only cruise in certain areas at certain times of the year, but there are things you still need to watch out for. One of which is related to the weather. So you might decide, oh, that's great, I'm going to go to the Caribbean in July because it's the middle of summer. However, that's in the hurricane season. So make sure that as you look at the regions, although you can cruise in some of them, the weather's not great. So for example, in Alaska, you get a lot of rain, particularly as you head into the center and towards the end of the season. If you're going, say, to Tahiti and the French Polynesian Islands, you'll find the rainy season really runs up to the end of May into June time, and then it gets really good weather after that with very little rain. So when you're looking at booking, also take a look in detail about what weather you're likely to have on that cruise. Because the cruise line's going there doesn't necessarily mean it's a great time of the year to go to. The other thing linked to that is make sure that you're understanding the type of travel you're going to have on different types of cruises. So again, I'll use the Caribbean as an example. If you're heading in the middle of summer, you're going to have lots of families. If you're heading at spring break time, you might have lots of partying people. If you head out, say, in January, February, you might have an older crowd. So really think about what the school holidays, the college holidays, the university holidays are, the big public holidays that are taking place at different times of the year, because that could affect the type of person you're on board. So for example, I don't have kids and I like to travel without kids on board. So I'd always usually go to the Caribbean out of school holiday times, so perhaps November or February, because it's going to be more people that are more couples, more solos, and more of an adult crowd, for example. People in their enthusiasm to book a cruise and book a particular itinerary don't always think through or understand the fine print, the cancellation, the refund terms, and this is really important. One of the things we got more used to in the whole period of the shutdown and restarting of cruising is the cruise lines introduced much more flexible cancellation and change and refund policies. However, as we look further ahead, it's reverting back to the old, more traditional booking and cancellation terms, which are pretty rigid. So when you're booking a cruise, take a look at a couple of things. First of all, understand what the deposit level is going to be. Some cruise lines have very large deposits. So for example, at the time of recording, you had to deposit 20% with, say, Virgin Voyages, where some other cruise lines were offering really low deposits. Also understand if the deposits will be refundable or you can move them. So that actually means you might want to book a cruise, but you're not 100% sure, but you know that you can get the deposit back. Also carefully understand the cancellation terms. So a lot of cruise lines, certainly once you've paid the final balance, it's very, very, very strict cancellation where you can lose between 75% and 100% of your fare really, really easily. Even doing sometimes on some cruise lines, simply changing a passenger name is counted as a cancellation. So perhaps you're cruising with somebody and they can't come and you want to switch it. Some cruise lines will actually take that as a cancellation and you will lose that fare for that person. Now you can often normally negotiate around that if you're good at negotiating and perhaps put your foot down, but it is a really big challenge. Also bear in mind that cruise lines within the cruise contract can change without any compensation the itinerary. So you might be heading to the Caribbean, it might have a certain amount of ports, but because the ports have stayed closed or there's an issue with the port or it gets too busy, they can chop and change out ports at will pretty much without having to give you compensation. So really understand as you book some of those limitations and some of those rules. Another big mistake that people make when booking a cruise is they get really excited about the cruise, they book the cruise, but they don't think through travel insurance. Travel insurance is really, really important. It's important to take our travel insurance ideally at the time of making a booking and having a travel insurance that includes cancel for any reason. Now, some of the rules and regulations have got much tighter through the whole pandemic situation where a lot of the insurance companies are taking out some of the cancel for any reason, but you really want travel insurance when you book so that if you do have to pull out of a cruise at any stage, you have insurance to cover you. Also make sure that you understand, does it cover if there are any pandemic related issues crop up? Many of them will not cover it. Now, with everything that's happened, it's still not entirely clear how expensive or easy it is to get travel insurance that includes cruises. So for example, my partner recently got a notification from their insurance company which said they no longer by default carried cruise as part of their policy. So you had to contact them and pay quite a big premium to get cruise cover. So really important, make sure that you can get travel insurance because of your age or any pre-existing conditions before you make a booking, because you may find that going on a cruise is very risky without having travel insurance. If something does happen to you, God forbid you break a leg or something, or you fall ill and you have to be evacuated or put into hospital on land, the cost can be absolutely enormous. So cruising without travel insurance is a really bad idea. Those are some of the most common mistakes I see with people booking a cruise. We've all done it. I've done many of these, which is how I've learned those, or I've heard people talking about those. I have loads more videos packed full of tips and advice about cruising. So why don't you watch another one of those right now?